Several versions of LANDFIRE fuel support the national level fire and fuels programs like FPA and WFDS. LANDFIRE 1.0 was our first national fuel data set. LANDFIRE 1.05, also refreshed 2001, included the updated canopy cover and canopy height from EVC and EVH that Birgit was talking about earlier. In LANDFIRE 1.10, we also call that refresh 2008, has the updated, or was updated with disturbances. And then the newest version that will be coming out, I'm not sure what the versioning number is going to be called, but it's essentially refresh 2010. Coming soon with new disturbance updates with fire and other disturbances up to 2010. Possibly new fuel transitions for certain areas based on changing weather conditions or long-term weather conditions. So possibly we'll have that incorporated in, maybe not, depending on how development goes on that. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few slides later. This is just a quick slide to point out the different geo areas that we deal with, as well as zones, and then also Alaska and Hawaii. So in the upper left, there's the PNW, the Pacific Northwest, Pacific Southwest, North Central, South Central, Northeast, Southeast. And a little bit on data arrangement. So initially, all the data images are from 99 to 2003. So that's kind of the reason for these updates, is to grow the data and add in disturbances. Resolution of the data is 30 by 30 meter pixels. And so that can cause some simulation problems. If you are simulating large areas, it can really draw down the processors, things like that. So if you're running WFDS, I think they used to have a disclaimer in there saying to go with a lower resolution pixel. But it is available at 30 by 30 meters. Let's see. And then plot data is strongest in forest vegetation types. As we saw in a few of Brenda's discussion earlier, the FIA data was really strong. And let's see here, I'm cruising through these slides, but there's a lot of them, so don't worry, I have plenty to tell you. The fuel and fire data layers are based on vegetation, so EVT, EVC, EVH. The existing vegetation types based on nature serves ecological systems. EVC, existing vegetation cover, has 3 life forms, tree, shrub, herb, and is classified into 10% breaks. So the way that works is if you don't have at least, well, you have to have at least 10% tree cover to be a tree pixel. And if you don't have that, you have to be at least 10% shrub to be a shrub pixel. And if you don't have that, you're an herbaceous pixel, okay, in your cover layer. Under the existing vegetation height, it's the same way, except now you're getting a height pixel. And if you drill down through all of these, they all coincide with each other, and all of these different layers tell the whole story of the land. So with tree, shrub, and herb and existing vegetation height, you have to go back to the cover, and if they had at least 10% cover, it's a tree pixel and so forth. Biophysical setting. Essentially, on the most basic level, it's vegetation with a natural history disturbance. And you can read through the actual description there. So all of these layers are what we use in our fire behavior crosswalks, or in the LANDFIRE total field change tool that we use to map our fuels. We use those 4 layers to map our fuel layers. Also, there's a disturbance layer in there that I will talk about a little bit, but it's kind of incorporated in with this. So the national LANDFIRE data for LANDFIRE 1.0 was used in fire seasons 2006 through 2007, and then they did after-action reviews after each one of those, and there were some issues that are identified. Barriers to fire spread were not quite accurate, so rock, water, roads, sparse conditions, barren conditions, things like that. The canopy base height was too high, and the bulk density was too low to get initiation of crown fire and then crown fire spread. The urban and ag was all non-burnable. So in the NLCD, National Land Cover Data Set, that was used, if it said it was urban or ag, or developed as urban, it was given a non-burnable fuel model. Okay, and that caused some problems. Let's see. As a result of several initiatives, we began an expert opinion canopy base height. And what that was, we herded a whole bunch of people into the fire lab over in Missoula, Montana, a whole bunch of fire and fuel specialists, sat them in a room, and we said, okay, now, if we had this fuel model in this vegetation type and this type of weather, and basically at what 20-foot wind speed would you need to see passive crown fire? So we take that 20-foot wind speed, we grabbed Joe Scott, and we said, hey Joe, now calculate this, and he told us what the base height would be. Okay. And we actually used some of that still to kind of quality control some of our base height data and look through it. Also, we did many calibration workshops throughout the United States in different areas, and we brought in fuel specialists, had them in a room again, herded everybody in, and then showed everyone the data and said, what do you think of this? Are the fuel models in the right spot? Can we adjust these fuel models? How do we move them around? And we use that LANDFIRE total fuel change tool to develop new rule sets, map it, then remap it, and then remap it until they said, yeah, that's what we wanted. All of these rule sets were developed on an average fire season condition. And then also, in some cases, when we were going through these, Charlie pointed out that decisions were made with respect to a high base height and bulk density. They already knew this for people that were already using the data. So that was something they were kind of rolling around in their heads when they said, okay, we want this to have a fuel model of timber understory 5 because we know that if the canopy base height's too high, bulk density is too low, bulk density is too low, that we can get torching and crowning. So they were kind of doing that in some cases, and you can see that in the P&W in a couple areas where we have a couple C's of TU5, and I'll address that here in a little bit. Make sure I'm on the same page here. So the improvements layer began, and this was the fire seasons of 06, 07, and 08. It provided significant change within the LANDFIRE national base data. So we started with working on the rock, water, roads, barren, riparian. Were all reassessed with new methods so that we could kind of address that barriers problem. The urban ag mass were broken into burnable, non-burnable EVTs. So we added fuel models to the developed areas, mainly the low and moderate developed areas, not necessarily cities and pavement and things like that, but it was mostly that low and moderate area. We used a newer national land cover data set, which helped out quite a bit, a newer version of that. And we used NAS data, which was the National Agriculture Statistics Service. And that helped us break the agriculture into many different pieces, and we could look at that and determine what we thought was going to burn. And when we found those, we added fuel models to them. And those that we didn't think would burn, we still gave those non-burnable fuel models. Okay? So that was all in the improvements layer. Then we came to the LANDFIRE 105 Refresh 2001. And we took the new cover and new height methods that Birgit talked about, and we used those in there that were remapped for EVC and EVH. So that improved things greatly. It really helped with reducing the wind speed, or the wind reduction factor. We had a really high wind reduction factor earlier because the high cover really messed with the models. So having that lowered canopy cover helped out a ton. The only thing that this did cause a problem for us was pretty minor, but it did show that we ended up shifting some of our fuel model pixels. So what we did, the process that we took in is we wanted to keep the calibrated fuel model rules from all that traveling around the United States and asking people, how does this burn? So we wanted to keep those all in the same place, so we came up with an auto rule function that basically altered the rules within the total fuel change tool. And so that basically made it so we remapped the fuels in essentially the same spots. But now you can imagine if you had a pixel in, or you had 100,000 pixels in 90% cover, right, tree cover, and they were all TL3, and then you had 200,000 pixels in, say, 70% tree cover that were TL8, right? Now you take those higher pixels, shove them into the lower pixel classification. Now we have 200,000 pixels of TL8 and 100,000 pixels of TL3. Well, we have to give it something. So what we do is we give it the TL8 because there were more pixels of TL8. So some of those pixels get shifted around. It's not really a big deal. But in some cases you can see this and it does affect it. Okay? New canopy base height and bulk density approaches were based on plot data. Like I said, mainly FIA. The canopy base heights were drastically lowered. And then the bulk density approach was a general linear model that was developed by Tom Thompson and Matt Reeves, I believe, that basically uses canopy cover and canopy height to come up with bulk density. Then the improvements layer that I talked about earlier was included in this 105, the 2001 data. Then on LANDFIRE 110, refresh 2008, we also took all the stuff from 105, 2001. Then we brought it into 2008. We added in disturbances in the canopy, mainly the canopy cover at first, with EBC and EVH. And we used FES to help us determine, or the FES FFE extension to help us determine how things were going to be reduced as far as canopy cover, canopy height, base height, all that kind of stuff. What we did was we threw in various different scenarios that basically encompassed different fire types or mechanical types of disturbance. I think we also had major wind events, insect and disease, and there's another one in there that's escaping me at this point. But at different severities, low, moderate, high, and then in 3 different time steps or time scenarios. And those were immediately after the disturbance, midway between the disturbance, and midway between 0 to 5 years and midway between 5 to 10 years. And then, like I said, the canopy bulk density, general linear model followed the canopy cover and canopy height attributes pretty well. So let's see. Make sure I don't get off here. Okay, so and then we also had to add disturbance to the fuel models, right? The surface fuel models. And those were adjusted by Charlie Martin. He called up various different people in each georegion and did webinars with them, just WebExes essentially, and said, okay, if I have this type of fuel model and this type of vegetation, and I have a fire or a type of disturbance that was, say, fire at this point, and it was high severity, and this time series, 0 to 5 years, what would this transition to? What would the fuel model transition to? And then he would write up a new rule for that. And he basically went through all the different types of disturbances, all the different severity types, all the different time since disturbance within each one of those, came up with new fuel models. And then he did that for the second growing season, which was that 0 to 5 year period, and then also from 5 to 10 years, which is essentially 8 years is what he targeted. And the general fire behavior for this was reduced immediately after moderate and high severity fires and treatment areas. And anything after 10 years, we left up to the vegetation to be grown, and then they were just thrown back into the normal rule sets of fire behavior that we have in the total field change tool. Okay, so this is an evaluation that Charlie did on the Wallow fire, which was June 2011. So this is the fire perimeter. And let's see here, let's get to something a little more interesting here. So this is the LANDFIRE National simulation for June 2nd, and it's a 10-hour burn period with max gust winds of 25 miles an hour. And you can see that through here, it didn't spread very well, actually. We're trying to get out to here, and we only made it like a third of the way. With the, oh, and then this is the fire type as well. So Charlie's slightly colorblind, I think, but he likes to use surface fire as yellow, and he doesn't mind I say that. He likes to use surface fire as yellow. Sometimes people use green, but green here is passive crown fire, and red is active crown fire. So the max gust wind speed is 25 miles an hour, and then the angle is, or the wind angle is 220 degrees. So take a look at those colors real quick, and then we'll shift over. Now, okay, so now you can see the increase in active crown fire was quite a bit. And this is the LANDFIRE 2001 data. And then here's the far side simulation for the 2001 data. Same burn period of 10 hours, max gust winds 25 miles an hour. So the thing to point out is we got a much better spread rate with 2001, or perimeter with the far side now. But the thing that we really want to show here is it did grow better, it did follow the perimeter very well. Right in here are treatment areas that were not included in the 2001 data. They are in 2008, and I'll show you that here in a second. And this is the town of Alpine right here. And you can see the fire spread in here, or the simulation spread through there. It didn't actually spread in the fire. But if we look here in the LANDFIRE 110, same burn period, same max gust, it actually slowed the fire here because those treatments were added in at that point. And then it didn't actually make the alpine, which depicts actually what happened. And then if you look up in here, this is an area of TL5 and TL3 in there. And I think part of the problem, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, but a lot of this spread through spotting. And we just couldn't get that to happen in the simulation at that point. So that's kind of why that's not burning in there.
There's a drainage right in the middle of that fire simulation that you can see there's a lot of non-burned pixels in the middle there. And that slowed the simulation down so that it couldn't carry through the northeast corner
Okay, and those are the fire treatments. So this was that southeast corner, and these are the fire treatments here, and you can see where the fire started to spread through there and then died out just slightly after the treatment in the simulation. All right, how are we doing on time?
You got 7 more minutes.
Ooh, excellent. Okay. So I can slow down through our considerations here. So some surface fuel model rules developed in LANDFIRE 1.0 were calibrated with a high canopy base height, and I talked about this a little earlier, and a low canopy bulk density in mind. Now, this isn't something we told people to do. It's just something that happened during a calibration in certain areas. People like Charlie, he automatically did that in his head because he was, he's a fire behavior analyst, and he knows, what's going on. So when he gave us the idea, or when we first came down, he said, hey, I know that if I give this a TU5, it's going to counteract these things. I don't have to tell them that, but I know that I'm going to give them this, right? So that's what is kind of one of these artifacts in LANDFIRE National. So it makes torching and crowning, where did I leave this? These may create more torching and crowning than desired when used with corrected, updated canopy base height and bulk density in the LANDFIRE National. So what that means is we took the same fuel rules that were calibrated, brought them into LANDFIRE National 2001. Now in 2001 we have a lower bulk base height, higher bulk density, we get torching and crowning much easier. Now this hotter fuel model that's in a couple of these places, and like I said, there's a good spot here in the PNW in Oregon where we have a pretty good sizable area of TU5 where this happens a lot if you just take it and write it out of the box. Now a way to counteract this, when you download the data or use it in WFDIS or whatever, is to change the live fuel moistures, because TU5 responds very, very well with the live fuel moistures. So just alter those a little bit, and you can tune your simulations pretty well with that. So that'll help curtail this artifact, essentially. So let's see here. Surface fuel models are not developed for extreme conditions that can characterize large fires. Most EVTs, average fuel moistures, and wind speed should suffice to model these conditions. But some special conditions are being considered by the LANDFIRE field team. And so these are some of the things that we have in development now. Hopefully we'll have them ready for 2010. They may not make it. We'll see. Frank's looking at me like, I don't know, maybe. So in the southeast geo area, we have, we're going to use KBDI essentially. And the reason for this is the wet season condition was used at the calibration workshops to reflect their average fire season fuel layer. Many low timber fuel models were used as a result of this approach and may not accurately model the below normal rainfall years when fire activity is high. So what that means is when the swamps are burning, what was it, the Okefenokee, we had a huge drought, right? Well, what predicted or what depicted this drought very well was the KBDI, or the drought index. And what we propose to do is to take that drought index, and at certain areas of that index, we will adjust the fuel models or allow them to be adjusted or give you fuel models to adjust. We haven't quite come up with the way this is going to happen yet. We may adjust them ourselves. We may give them to you to adjust based on the KBDI and give some direction on how to do that. But the take-home message is that now we can get these swamps to burn more like they did. I think, when was the Okefenokee? Remember, Charlie?
What's that?
Okefenokee, the burn there?
When it burned?
Yeah.
2007.
Yeah, so really, really high drought in the southeast.
Yeah.
2011.
2011.
Yeah. Yeah. And then another area, Great Basin, Southwest area, some years have wet late winter and early spring conditions that contribute to the heavier than normal annual grass fuel load. The average fire season fuel models assigned during the calibration workshops do not provide for this fuel load and the potential fire spread that could result from it. And so we're developing an effort to look at the fuel loading and to predict areas of increased fuel loading, mainly just grassy areas, things like that, so that we can add fuel models where they don't have fuel models or actually increase the grass fuel loading in those areas with fuel models, or we can decrease those in certain areas as well. So hopefully these are going to be online for the 2010. I'm not guaranteeing anything though. Right, Frank?
Don't guarantee.
I'm not guaranteeing anything. And that should be it.